All right, everyone. So I want to just drop in and talk about something briefly here from the addictions, mental health, recovery, sober open mic, perspective. And, lately I've been talking all about my sobriety story, but I've often posted in the last few years about homeless people. And, I have this on my Hinge profile, which is a dating app, that something I'd like to do is find a way to eradicate homelessness. And I didn't have that same passion before rehab. And so rehab kind of helped me, as I mentioned, it helped me see all these other people in various suffering and traumatic situations who were using drugs, alcohol, etc. And it helped me understand that I do not need to judge people. And so once I saw that in myself, how I used to judge people and how I was being invited to stop, I proceeded to have this new compassion for homeless people because it felt more like a genuine empathy of that could have been me with those circumstances. And so, I was smoking today and I sat down to have a coffee at my favorite little smoking coffee spot, and there was a dude there. And this dude who was pretty tame, right? Pretty good guy, probably. Didn't give off any bad vibes. Just a dude, just a guy, just a guy as I fixed my glasses. But the thing was, he started talking about how the city is allowing people to loiter more. Like peace officers can't enforce it. His friend's a peace officer, and so now they can't do anything about the crack addicts in the mall, and like that's actually a fair concern, right? Like if I want to go to the mall, or I've said for a while, like downtown Edmonton, I wouldn't want my sister going there by herself, like pushing my niece around. It's like Edmonton's not safe downtown, right? Because there are a lot of people that appear to possibly be homeless and possibly on drugs who are very unpredictable, right? But that, safety aside, right, they're still people. Anyway, it's a whole conversation. But so I could kind of see where he was saying, right, like, okay, maybe them loitering around malls, smoking crack pipes, that's probably not good for all of us, right? Like there's probably a better place to smoke your crack pipe while you're, in a period of transition, hopefully to getting better, etc. But then he said something that kind of took me aback, and he was like, so, like, these homeless people, like, they have homes, right? This is literally what he said. These homeless people have homes, they get their AISH every 2 weeks, and then they go buy drugs, and I was sitting there with shades on, and I'm thinking, no. Actually, no. And so I just said to him, I'm like, actually, I don't think that's true. Yeah, I'm like, I don't know where you're getting that from, but I'm like, I think literally homeless people are often homeless, And he didn't really argue it. He was just like, oh, well, I think they get their age. And so the reason I bring this up is because that's the stigma, right, of drug addiction. That's the stigma of homeless people should get a job. Like that's what's wrong with them is they don't have jobs. And if we could just give jobs to homeless people, like Ralph Klein, right, throwing cash at them or yelling at them from a limo back in the 2000s, that would fix it. A job would fix it. And it's just a fundamental misunderstanding of the situation, And I think that's what's kind of most dangerous is it's not like, there's some people who have an informed opinion around addictions and mental health as it relates to homelessness, and they have an informed opinion that is basically these people have chosen that first hit of heroin, these people have chosen to do drugs, drink, whatever. They fucking deserve this outcome. Now, the reason that opinion will work some of the time is because it is layered with some truth, right? In life, like we do get to make choices and we do have ourselves to thank at the end of the day for the results of those choices. all of that's true, right? So some people do have that strong opinion about the homeless. But, the truth is that the ignorant are, I think, in the majority, not the majority, but it's almost more dangerous to be the ignorant person. I don't know if that makes sense. It's almost like a biblical quote, right? Like if you're black or not if you're black or white. That's a Michael Jackson song, which is not in the Bible at all, but I still encourage you to check it out in general. But, Jesus is like, if you're not hot or cold, I'll spit you out. And it's like, I think on some of these issues, it's good to be hot or cold, right? Because that ignorant middle ground is extremely dangerous. Like, I can still remember a story. I'm going to tell you the story right now because I like to talk and I feel kind of inspired by the idea of reducing shame and stigma for the love of God. Can we please reduce that? So when I was younger, it was right after my dad's car accident. I was at someone's house. There's a group of people sitting around, okay? These people were talking about, they were rural Albertans, okay, out in Mayerthorpe. And they're talking about going into Edmonton to an Oilers game. And they were talking about walking underneath the LRT over by Rexall Place and how, there's always some guy begging for food and we all know what he's going to do if I give him $20. He's just going to buy a bottle of vodka. And I still remember the story. And I remember sitting there and I had been just pushing my dad around in a wheelchair. And that probably gave me more empathy, compassion for other people, right? And so I remember thinking, you're driving into Edmonton in a $75,000 Chevy Silverado. You are going to the keg and spending $150 on steaks and drinks for you and your wife. Then you're going to the Oilers game and you're spending a couple $100 there and driving home. And in the midst of all that, you can't give fucking $20 to the homeless guy because he just might buy a bottle of vodka. We wouldn't want that to be the outcome. Does that make any sense? But that's people's opinion of homeless people, right? Like if I give them money, they will buy drugs. Well, let me just stop and break up my own story by giving you some advice for what you could do with homeless people. And by the way, I am not the person that always talks to the homeless. I walk White Ave. I often have a suit on because I love doing that. And I often have earbuds in and people will talk to me and I don't always engage. So I'm not some perfect some perfect good Samaritan. But I'll tell you what works. When someone engages you, engage them like they're a normal human being. Try it. Okay, so you're walking down the street, right? And you run into someone who apparently is begging for something from you, right? The other day I saw this lady, she's got like both of her legs amputated, and she's got a sign in front of her that says her age has been reduced, blah, 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 okay? Now, there's a couple ways you can view this woman, and the first way is someone else put her there. Obviously, she doesn't have her two legs, but she's manipulating all of us, right? And, like, literally, I had a landlord a couple iterations ago, and that was his opinion, right? He used to talk about driving home from work and seeing a homeless guy begging, but the guy had new sneakers, so he must be lying, And I remember thinking, what if someone gave him the fucking sneakers? Like, why are you such an asshole? Like our perceptions are become reality and then we lose compassion and empathy. Okay, so back to we're walking down White. Engage with people. This lady with the Aish, right? She had this little sign and of course I was drawn to it because my dad was once in a wheelchair and so I gave her some change. I had like $1.25 and I gave her the change and she was really bright and happy. And so like, what if that was some sort of scam? It didn't scam anyone. I got connection. I got to smile at someone in a wheelchair. It was worth $1.25, So you ask these people what their name is. That's the number one thing I like to do when I stop and talk to someone on the street. Hey, what's your name? The other day, I did this with a guy at the dollar store. I walked by the dollar store and I'm like, yo, can I get you some? Let me get you a chocolate bar. He's like, cool, I love peanut butter cups. And then he starts describing his peanut allergy to me. And I have one too, right? But these are human beings. Like I happen to live in this condo for now, but it's not that different from where he lives. It's just he doesn't have running water. Let's stop categorizing these people by whether they have a fucking home. Treat them like human beings, That's my tip. That's literally my tip, right? And so back to the story, like ignorance around addiction, ignorance around mental health leads to stigma. And stigma, that shit's no good. Stigma and shame, we got to end that, right? And it's cultural, it's generational, it's societal, it's all these things. But I really think that the biggest way to end stigma and shame is through vulnerability and connection, right? So me being on here, I'm not going to sleep on the street tonight. I have a nice bed to sleep in, but I can tell you about my past experiences with mental health and with addiction. And maybe that can, if you can look at me and see that I had the same conditions as someone on the street has, and that it could have been me, if not for my mom paying rent for a couple months, or her driving me to a nice rehab that I got to go to because I had ID and a job at the time, and paperwork and a bill to bring to healthcare, right? Like, think of these homeless people. So this has been kind of a rant, but it truly bothers me when we view the homeless people as just the homeless people. Like, no, there's a guy and he has a name. His name was Ray, and he wanted a peanut butter cup, and he thanked me for it. And it was probably the highlight of his afternoon was I bought him a fucking peanut butter cup thing for $1. So, if you're pushing a stroller with small children, you're not probably going to engage. But I've seen women do it. Like, they still will talk to someone that talks to them. So I'm just begging you, don't be the guy on the having coffee today who told me that everyone who's homeless has a home and they're getting support payments every 2 months and they just buy drugs and then go to the mall. Because that's like a dangerous level of truth mixed with complete false statements. So, Sober Mike, we're going to have a podcast coming soon, next week, with a close friend of mine. And we're going to be talking about stigma and shame, mental health. So stay tuned, because it's like, we met up yesterday and I'm telling you, it's going to be straight fire. It's going to be a pure banger, whatever that means in this context. But here's your task. So let's start doing some takeaways from these videos I keep creating that are just me babbling. Make an effort the next time, like in the next 7 days, if you walk Jasper Ave or if you walk White Ave, you're going to run into someone who's maybe in distress, who looks like they haven't showered for a few days, who is a little out of sorts. Make some sort of effort to find out their name. That's it. Just find out their name. Find out their name. And then let me know. Okay? Let's humanize the homeless. How about that? Okay? All right. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Let's go.